Hey guys, Exile here. I wanted to go over the build that I'm going to be playing for 3.26. Probably going to keep it short and sweet if possible because there's a lot of slam guides out and I just wanted to give my take on it as somebody that played it for pretty much 8 days playtime, and I was able to do that in hardcore with 0 deaths, and I had pretty good success in hardcore trade last league playing this build. And nothing's really changing from 3.25 to 3.26, at least for Earthshatter. There's like subtle changes to the Berserker Ascendancy. There's no enchants for maces anymore, so that's worth keeping in mind. Now, first and foremost, why Earthshatter? Why not snaking? Quite simply, just preference. Honestly, they map at similar speeds. They do similar DPS, at least on low gear. Earthshatter does a little bit more single target during the early progression. But the trade-off there is that snaking map clear is way nicer because it just auto targets, hits everything. So honestly, it's kind of preference, but for your progression, you do need to spend a lot of time in Merc Lab for snaking potentially. You might be in there for 15 minutes, you might be there for an hour, you might be there for 2, because the non-transfigure to transfigure gem option is about a 1 in 10 labs, I believe, from Merc Lab. Whereas Earthshatter, I'm just getting the quality and I'm going into maps, and if I want to swap to snaking later, I can just do that. Also, Leech is a bit easier to solve early on Earthshatter. You can just get a mana Leech Jewel because all your damage is just physical damage. It's very simple, straightforward. Snaking, mostly elemental damage, especially if you're like converting it all with the Glovecraft, so it's a little bit harder to get that Leech. But that being said, if you want to start with Earthshatter for your progression and then swap over to snaking, it's a very simple respec, as long as you're not like super endgame geared and have like, conversion gloves on your snaking guy and then you're trying to go to Earthshatter, stuff like that. So, anyway, I wanted to quickly explain how Earthshatter works. So essentially you just slam the ground, bang, you create 6 fissures like this, and then you Warcry, and then it blows all the fissures up. And the idea here is you want to try to overlap them on the boss. You can't really influence it all that much, but that can be kind of hard to approximate Earthshatter's damage because of the variance in damage from the spikes, because they spread out quite a decent difference and have different trajectory when you slam. So if you're in a small arena, you're just going to shotgun the boss. You're going to hit all your spikes. If you're not, you're probably going to hit like 2-3 spikes. So yeah, keep that in mind, especially when you're running the map layout. But the reason the playstyle is not as annoying as it used to be is because we have auto exertion on a bunch of our Warcries here. And it's important to put a differing amount of quality on your Warcries so that they don't share the same cooldown. That makes it so that they blow up your spikes, more desynced, so it's a lot easier to kind of automate the process. And then the General's Cry here. General's Cry has a 3-second cooldown, so it's really good for Earthshatter, especially when you don't have quality everywhere and a ton of cooldown recovery rate in your Warcries. So we always run this early on, at least, just to pop the spikes for us, make the process easier. So anyway, this character is very geared, but I wanted to give you guys a quick idea of, how the maps are going to look on Earthshatter. Like I said, this is like aspirational gear, like a ton of divines. I crafted this axe myself. It took a lot of currency. Let's put in a quick Minotaur. But yeah, we're basically just going to enter the map. Cool trick I like to use. I have Enduring Cry in my offhand here. And I just Enduring Cry at the start of my map with Red Blade Banner, and then boom, I'm instantly at max endurance charges. And you see all my Warcries going off. We're just running through the map. We just kind of right click, and the spikes get blown up, generally, from our automation. Sometimes you have to Warcry just to like keep it up. Keep your buffs up, that's kind of the idea. But with Berserker's Ascendancy, we have a ton of exerts. It's very easy to keep the buffs up. will say that for Earthshatter, you definitely want to be running more condensed maps because it's a lot easier to clear them efficiently. So we're just going to walk up to Minotaur here. Kill him really quickly. And yeah, that's like how like the endgame character is going to look. So let's log over to a character with a run I just did yesterday. And this character is basically just starting red maps. I think I'm like 7 hours playtime or something. I'll quickly mouse over the gear. The axe is pretty bad. You'll probably get a better axe from Faustus next league, just gambling, but I didn't have that in a practice run. The boots here are my best item. Got really lucky this run. Also, I got a 6 link, which is really lucky, but I'm not using it intentionally, so we're just using it as a 5 link. Let's go ahead and put a quick T16 crystal ore in. The boss is going to be an actual pain in the ass, but it's probably good to showcase something challenging for the build. I am only rallying crying on this setup, so that's important to keep in mind. My character that I was using a minute ago, I was more willing to cast more war cries. So I could run Pride endgame, so that's why I was doing that. This is basically what your map clear is going to look like, you know, when you get to red maps, as long as you have a somewhat decent weapon. I do have Nico, which is going to, like, pat on the boss a little bit, but nonetheless, I think the gear here is pretty mediocre for DPS anyway. Yeah, I think this boss is going to be very hard, and I might die, but we'll find out. At least I can shotgun it quite well, as you can see, because this is like the power of Earthshatter, right? Like, the arena is small here. I can just shotgun the boss. And do a lot of damage. But yeah, this is like, you know, pretty mediocre character, level 89, SSF. 7 hours played. Alright, that being said, let's get into the POB. I just wanted to start off by saying there is a ton of different sections in here. I have the progression, leveling, trees. I've got fissure trees even for people who want to play Volcanic Fissure. And then I also have like all the links in here. I've got the fresh mapping 4 links set up for the skills. I've got the endgame setups. And then even for the config, I've got a fissure config, which obviously has a bit more ailments. So keep that in mind. Make sure you read the notes section, please. There are some very important... There's some very important things in here, like especially mana management and talking about Echoes of Creation. And your endurance charge sustain. So, anyway, I like to put gear in the POB that is something I can expect myself to get an SSF. So, if you're confident in the game and you're an SSF, I would say you could probably achieve this gear in a trade league. It should be easily available. Not sure on the cost because slams are meta this league. It's pretty rare for slams to be meta. So we're in a little uncharted territory, but anyway, 1000 DPS axe, Echoes of Creation from Ubershaper, and then just general solid armor bases and jewelry. The only item I would say that is like actual extreme pain to farm in SSF is probably going to be the Light of Meaning. But that's kind of like the endgame gear I'm looking at, and then I've even got like a fresh map set up here with like a 480 axe. You want to gamble your axe from Faustus, the black market. Make sure you're doing that because you're pretty likely going to get like a, you know, 450 to 600, maybe even better if you get lucky axe when you get to maps. And then everything else is just like some basic life res rares. Carnage Heart is a solid early progression item, gives you attributes, all res, some damage, conditional damage, of course. Just like basic gear. And then for leveling, we are going to be leveling with Ground Slam until level 12. And then after that, we're going to be using Sunder all the way until Merc Lab. After we get Merc Lab quality on our Earthshatter, we are going to swap to it and play that until forever, unless you want to swap to Snaking. So with the gear I've got in the POB, we're doing about 6.2 million with the initial hit, and then I like to calculate it based on 2 to 3 spikes hits. You know, if we have 3 spikes, 4.3 mil each spike, we're at, you know, 13 mil from that, and then, you know, 6 mil from our Earthshatter. Kind of just depends on the boss arena. Really hard to POB Earthshatter damage. you know, getting close to 20 million on the setup we've got here. And then on the fissure setup, if I change the config here and the links, we're looking at about 20 million on 2 fissures. I know people put 3 fissures in their POB, but like, you have to be aiming really well to do that. And the 3rd fissure doesn't hit. It's the 2 fissures hit, and then the traveling portion hits. So I don't really think this is like a real number. I like to just put 2. So I'd say it's like 20 million-ish with no tincture up. But yeah, so common things to look out for when playing Earthshatter and common mistakes on the build. I put some of them in the notes section, but I want to talk about them. So for mana management, really important. You probably are going to end up using a mana flask if you want to auto-exert as many war cries as I'm planning on auto-exerting, which is all of them except Rallying Cry. You're going to be using that until you get 1 Elrion craft and a mana leech jewel, and that's what I did in my run that I just showed you on that character. And then from that point, I took off the mana flask, used an Ellie flask instead. And if you get 2 Elrion crafts, let me mention what Elrion craft is. It's the non-channeling skills have minus cost. 2 Elrion crafts means all of your auto exerts are free, and you can go ahead and drop life tap in your links, which I use at the start of maps, and just sustain with that mana leech. Now, if you're using fissure, it's a bit more complicated. I would honestly use life tap and mana flask until you get the cheap clever thief anoint, which should be right, yeah, which gives you the mana leech that you need. There's some other ways to do it as well. You can also use Infernal Cry with mana leech linked to it, with 2 Elrion crafts. So that is a big one. Make sure you are focused on that. And then do not use Echoes of Creation, please, before your gear is pretty good. I put some breakpoints here. You also want good armor. Otherwise, the self-damage is going to absolutely blast you, and you're going to just kill your own character a bunch of times. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the POB. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in my chat or in the comments. I will try to answer them, and I will also be playing the build on League Start in the race, so you'll have something to go off of if you need help. At the end of the day, I would say slams are probably one of the best starters you could go with this league. There's not as much Warcry pianoing anymore, right? Like, it's just keeping up that Rallying Cry, and if you get enough reservation, you could even just auto-exert literally every single Warcry if you wanted to, but because of Berserker Ascendancy here, Warbringer, it's really, really easy to keep up your exerts compared to something like Slayer or Chieftain. And it's also viable to play this build on those Ascendancies as well, so just keep that in mind. I do think that slams get outscaled by other things, definitely defensively, but offensively as well. But they are really, 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 really solid starters, especially if you want to play like Slayer and transition into something else later down the line, or maybe transition into a champion build. But you really can't go wrong with these, and it's not nearly as complicated to play as it was back in the old slam days, as we remember. But yeah, anyway, that's what I'm going to be playing on League Start, and I will see you guys there. Peace.